Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You could find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. If you need me, just email me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Our archives are free. Spreaker.com. Friday night, I do a live show there at 8 p.m. There's a chat room. You get an email notification when I put up new content. And if you go there and Google Janet Phelan, Phalen, or At the Breaking Point of History, that's the name of her last book, you'll find my previous interviews with Janet Phelan, who's an advocate for really a lot, for the conservatorship stuff, elder abuse, this kind of stuff we're talking about all the time. And she's a real serious woman who's not afraid to take on the big guys. Janet Phelan, are you there?
I am. And may I correct you, please, because you misspelled my name.
Well, I do that all the time.
It's good you didn't call me Janet Reno or Janet Yellen. So Janet Phelan is Phelan. Thank you.
That's right. It's spelled Phelan, Phelan, but not Phelan, but it's pronounced Phelan, Janet Phelan. So
Correct.
Remind the audience, though, who is Janet Phelan, Phelan?
Well, I'm a reporter and author, and the most recently published book was published in 2021 by Trine Day and is titled At the Breaking Point of History, How Decades of U.S. Duplicity Enabled the Pandemic. Now, just very briefly about the book, there of course has been a lot of concern about the vaccines, and my book is not an anti-vax book. It doesn't tackle the issue of vaccines. Rather, it goes into the history of behind-the-scenes efforts by the U.S. to set up a pandemic. So, it takes an entirely different sort of tack in looking at this recent and rather disturbing history that we've had, and also, unfortunately, does point the way towards future incursions, similar incursions. So, and as a journalist, my articles appear at activistpost.com.
About this book, At the Breaking Point of History, How Decades of U.S. Duplicity Enabled the Pandemic, the description on Amazon is from the lead pipes in Flint, Michigan, to a duplicitous water commission in Medford, Oregon, to a secret psychiatric ward at UCLA. Okay, so it's a lot more than just a vaccine or a pandemic. There's a lot of content in the At the Breaking Point of History, How Decades of U.S. Duplicity Enabled the Pandemic. And you can go to the Spreaker.com archives or Patreon and find that original show. Janet, what are you up to these days?
Well, I'm still writing away, and I have a recently published article, Is the Government Now in the Elder Abuse Business? And this is what I think we're going to be discussing today, right?
Yes. So give us an idea, because when people hear that, is the government involved in elder abuse? Well, what would motivate that? Janet Phelan, explain to us.
Well, motivation, when you start discussing motivation, you kind of stray into problematic territory, because you have to start hypothesizing as to what people's motives are really all about. I will say something that should be fairly obvious, which is that older people tend to have a nest egg. And there has been quite a bit of concern voiced, particularly concerning these guardianships, that there is a financial motivation and that people are actually, their assets are being plundered by the state and by the guardians. So that could be one motivation. Another motivation, could be something even more nefarious. But I about what's really happening and not go straight into hypotheses. So I would like to start this conversation with a viewing of a form which on the surface appears to be very innocuous. It's a form that is promoted and actually promulgated by the California government through the Department of Social Services, and it's an evaluation form when a resident enters, shall we say, some sort of assisted living facility. Now, this is all great. The doctor evaluates the person and so forth, except when you scroll down, I believe it's number 14K, and the form is LIC 603A. You can find it by Googling it. There's a problem, because in this 14K, it states something that should raise huge red flags, which is the doctor evaluating the prospective resident states that the person can't leave the facility. So with the stroke of a pen, and in doing some sort of detour around the U.S. Constitution.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
Which guarantees that a person will not be deprived of life or liberty without due process. A doctor can deprive someone of liberty without due process. And this has taken place now, where a doctor has checked this 14K and summarily, without due process, has locked someone up, and there is no redress. Now, California, and as many other states, have passed an abundance of laws to supposedly protect someone's rights against exactly this sort of lockup. For example, if someone is psychiatrically detained in California, they can be psychiatrically detained under 5150, I believe it is, for 72 hours, at which point there has to be a judicial review. But there is no judicial review of LIC 603A 14K. A person doesn't get to go to court and contest this. A doctor signs it, and bingo, you are locked up forever.
Quick question, Janet Phelan. Now, does this apply, like if I go to a visit to my doctor, or it's only if I find myself involved in some kind of an institution or an elder care facility?
I believe that this form is used to evaluate residents at elder care facilities, including assisted living homes, not just nursing homes.
Right.
So somebody shows up there and the doctor approves their the abrogation of their liberty, and there's nothing they can do about it. Now, of course we want people who have limitations to be protected. Let's say somebody is confused and can't find their way around or something. You want to make sure that they don't wander off and can find their way back, okay? But unfortunately, there is evidence that this has been invoked when this was not the case, when a person certainly could find their way back and there was no danger of their wandering off and getting lost. So people are being locked up without due process. And this is a violation of the U.S. Constitution.
And just think, these are the most vulnerable people among us, people who need assistance to live. They need help at home, to get around, bathe themselves and stuff like that. Many times they don't have family members, and it would be so easy to target those lonely people alone who have that nest egg, like you said, and go in there and take over their life.
Well, I have a communication from California Disability Rights, an attorney there, who looked into this LIC 603A and made a very cryptic comment in which she said, well, she can't really comment on whether this kind of invokes a de facto conservatorship. Now, conservatorships have been in the news of late. There was the Free Britney movement, which highlighted some of the abuses inflicted on Britney Spears under her court-authorized guardianship. And once again, Britney Spears' guardian, who was her father, Jamie Spears, made an awful lot of money off Britney's conservatorship and her work. So, once again, people who have significant assets tend to fall prey to these sorts of processes. Now, in this recent article of mine, I go into a case that is going on in Chicago, Illinois, in Cook County, where an elderly woman who also had quite a bit of assets. She had a pension of about $8,000 a month, which is significant, and also a home in Skokie, a husband who had worked very diligently in real estate and had made quite a bit of money. And so this woman, named Amy Salas, was put under a guardianship, and the guardian decided unilaterally, without any input from her husband, to forcibly remove Amy from her home. And just parenthetically, there were no verified abuse reports that her husband was abusing her. The guardian simply decided to take Amy Salas. And having taken Amy Salas, the guardian put her in a home, Belmont Village in Buffalo Grove, and Illinois, and unilaterally decided to block her husband from any contact with her. Now, again, I've looked into this case. There are no verified abuse reports showing that in any way did Dean abuse his wife. Nevertheless, it got very interesting then, because the judge that was assigned the guardianship case.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
Is a Judge Shauna Bolliker, and Judge Shauna Bolliker has repeatedly ignored the law in Illinois law. And first of all, Illinois is a marital property state, which means that whatever belongs to Amy also belongs to Dean, and since Dean is not under a guardianship, his assets can't be touched. Well, not only has Bolliker ignored that statute whenever Dean has been in court, and believe me, I've been in court too, and I've heard this firsthand, and Dean protests that the law is not being obeyed, Shauna Bolliker orders that his comments be removed from the record. So she essentially took all of the assets which belonged to Dean and Amy, and then she went ahead and approved the foreclosure of their home. So Dean Salas, at 86 years of age, and has ended up living in his car. After a productive career working in real estate, in which I believe they had a nest egg of about $8 million, he's now reduced to utter homelessness.
Janet, this is terrifying when you hear these stories, Now, we know that the nursing homes and the conservatorships and the attorneys, they all have lobbyists who can get legislation passed, and they're making donations to their representatives. Who is advocating for these elderly people? Many times they have no family left, and it's not, and even if they can make donations, they're not making donations for 10 years. They're going to be gone soon. Is there an organization out there advocating for these people?
There are some grassroots organizations which have sprung up to sort of attempt to grapple with these abusive guardianships. As far as an official state agency advocating against another state agency, no.
What about AARP? Wouldn't they be ripe for this job, Wouldn't they be...
You'd think so.
Right?
You'd think so. Now, you had mentioned a moment ago, the laws that are passed. Yeah. And this brings up another can of worms, because clearly Judge Bolliker is ignoring the marital property law in Illinois. She's also, I'm going to quote a law here, it's 755 ILCS 5/11A-22, which is the law that she ignored, which allowed her to foreclose on the home in which they had lived for, I believe, over 50 years. So the problem we're having with legislation is there's all these fancy laws that states are passing now. We saw it in California, we saw it in Florida, we saw it in Nevada. Whenever there's a concerted sort of focus on corrupt guardianship, the state legislature swings into action and passes new protective laws. But the new protective laws are equally ignored by the judges. So, it becomes questionable what is even the point of legislation if a judge can unilaterally ignore a law and simply, issue illegal, what amounts to illegal dictums in a courtroom. Now, I did some work on Shauna Bolliker's background, and I went into her finances, her personal finances, as deeply as I could, given the availability and unavailability of public records. And what I looked at primarily was her transactions, her financial transactions that were listed on the state recorder's office under the grantor-grantee index, which shows some peculiar sorts of activities that could possibly be redolent of indicating bribe taking. For example, let's say a judge takes out a loan for $500,000 on their personal residence and pays it back in 2 years, and then takes out another $500,000 and pays it back. Now, you've got to start asking the question, judges make what, between $160,000 and $180,000 a year? Where are they getting the money to pay back these loans? And so it does appear that some judges have, shall we say, accepted loans which they haven't personally paid back. They can't personally pay back. And John Aboliker appears to be one of them.
Right. If I want to, let's say Janet Phelan, I want to send you a bribe. If I go to the bank and take out $100,000, it's going to set off all kind of currency transaction reports. But if you go to the bank and take out a loan for $100,000, and then I start making payments on that loan for you and make a big loan payment, a check out to that bank, that's really not going to turn up anywhere. If I write you a check, that could turn up. But if I'm writing a check to pay your mortgage, that's really not going to turn up. It'd be very difficult. You need a lot of scrutiny for that to turn up, a lot more than Fannie Willis type scrutiny, okay, for that to show up. And where's she getting this box of cash that she's walking around with is another story. But that's a well-known technique. Politicians, judges, that's how they do that.
Actually, interestingly, an alderman in Chicago, in Cook County as well, named Burke, was recently convicted on corruption charges. And in the original indictment, Burke was charged with taking out loans and not paying them back. Now, that's exactly what we're alleging that these judges are doing. Sorry. But somehow, in the course of the legal prosecution, that charge got lost. And
well, Janet Phelan, I hope you're not accusing the Chicago politics of being corrupt. That's outrageous, Miss Phelan.
No.
You owe an apology, Miss Phelan. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm very interested in the fact, because all of the major media was reporting initially when Burke was first charged that, he took out loans and didn't pay them back, and what's he doing with all that money? And suddenly that charge disappears. And personally, I think it may have disappeared because they're all doing it.
Right, and it's a pretty sloppy money laundering operation too. But you're right; it's the one they use, it's the one they all know, and they're keeping it. They're keeping it going.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, this Judge Bolliker in Crook County has been involved in some other questionable cases. It's certainly not just, the abuse of Dean Salas. Amy Salas. Oh, by the way, when the Guardian seized control of Amy and forcibly removed her from her home and severed her relationship with her husband, the Guardian also apparently ordered some life-changing surgeries, and Amy had all her teeth removed, and also was suffered some sort of surgery which has left her wheelchair bound. So, this is of grave concern. I mean, and the fact that she is married, and the Guardian has effectively severed the marital union. Now, Dean's doing the best he can. I mean, he's living in his car. He's trying to grapple with the situation as what life has given him. It hasn't exactly been a bowl of cherries now. And recently, he had a conversation. He was at Lovell VA Hospital and had a conversation there, which I was privy to, with a social worker who was just appalled at his story and said, "My goodness, you're being abused." And she filed an abuse report with Adult Protective Services. And this is where it got sort of telling. And I'm going to refer back to my original thesis now, that the government is in the elder abuse business. Because a APS worker named Samantha Richardson was assigned to the case, and initially Richardson was very aggressive. She was, the dean found her like banging on the window of his Toyota minivan in the early morning hours, and she wanted to interview him, and then she wanted to discuss things with me and also with some other people who know Dean. And suddenly everything changed. And according, Samantha Richardson will not talk to me about this, but according to reports from Dean Salas, she told him that she can't investigate when the abuse involves a sister state agency. In this case, we're talking about the courts, and we're talking about the Cook County Public Guardian. So she's just backed off. So, so apparently what this seems to indicate is that abuse is something to be prosecuted and looked into if it involves freelancers, but if it involves the state, hands off.
It would appear that serial killers on death row have more rights and more rights in the appeal system, in the court system, than an average guy just trying to live his last years.
Well, I had mentioned, that Bolliger has taken actions in some other cases. There's also a conservatorship case in her court involving Albert Camposano. I believe I got that pronounced correctly. And Albert also is married. He's married a woman named Sophie, and Bolliger decided to nullify the marriage. So this also gives the court more access to Albert's assets, because you don't have to worry about this, unpleasant little marital property state law, because there's no marriage. So a justice of Cook County Court married Sophie and Albert Camposano, and then Judge
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
Bolliger turned around and nullified the marriage.
And like I said, you couldn't do that to a death row inmate. You could not nullify their marriage. This is Janet Phelan. I had you on the show once before, and you were teaching a class on how to look into this business of these loans and researching your judges to see if they're taking out these second mortgages and they're getting mysteriously paid off. Are you still doing it?
I took a break. I do offer these classes online, and I did take a break last year. I had some sort of extraordinary challenges to deal with, but I plan to be offering these courses again, because the research is not that hard to do. I mean, basically, it's just not, and people need to know that not only is the research process valid, but we've been able to make inroads in a number of cases simply by researching the judge and then contacting him or her or the presiding judge and going, hey, what's going on with all this money flowing through your property? And we have found repeatedly where the judges are allergic to these findings. I've chased at least one judge off the bench simply by doing the research. That happened in San Bernardino, California. In other cases, we've gotten people out of jail by doing this research. We've gotten at least one man freed from indefinite psychiatric detainment by doing this research. We've gotten money returned to the trust simply by questioning the judge's, financial activities. So the research is not only a good tool to have, it's effective. So yes, I do plan to offer more classes soon.
Yeah, when you start scratching under the surface with these judges and you start looking at their personal life, the average person would just be shocked. You assume that these are like the pillars of the community, but then you start talking to their neighbors, you find out, they're kind of the sleaze of the community. Now, when you've been looking into this for a long time, because I've been talking to you for a couple of years, and I knew of you from years ago. But now you've been looking into this elder abuse, this conservatorship business, and this corruption for quite a bit of time. Now, are you finding that these are isolated pockets, small towns with the buddy system? What do they call that? What do they call that? The buddy system. You know what I'm talking about, right? The old.
The cronies.
Cronies, there you go.
Yeah,
So, do you find this in small towns and little pockets across the country, or is this widespread in every town?
Oh, I wish it were just pockets of abuse, because we're finding that, for example, 2/3 of the judges I've researched have mortgage histories that are very suspicious. 2/3. That's a large number. Now, unfortunately, we're finding that the abuse is not simply contained to probate court. For example, in this recent article, Is the Government Now in the Elder Abuse Business? There's some discussion of medical abuse of an individual in an assisted living facility in California. And the medical abuse has manifested in the following way. The individual has a diagnosis of hydrocephalus, which is like colloquially, that's water on the brain, which you can get if you fall and crack your head, There are apparently that's the most normal way of incurring this. And this can be a very dangerous diagnosis that will probably proceed to death if it is not corrected. And the correction is done surgically. A shunt is put in and the fluid is drained off. And that is how you deal with hydrocephalus. But this individual who is in an assisted living facility called Leisure Gardens in California is not receiving appropriate medical care. And, the question is, why not? So this person's not under a guardianship. Although, with the advent of the hydrocephalus, he is experiencing more and more confusion now, which is sort of, the progress of what happens with hydrocephalus. Your brain turns to mush, and then you die. Okay, so trying to figure out what's happening here, and I asked him if he would sign a waiver form letting me see his medical records, which of course are protected by HIPAA. And that's when it started to get really scary because, first of all, the form is being overridden by the home he's in. Leisure Gardens won't accept the validity of the form, and they say, oh, he revoked the form. So I asked, well, what evidence do you have that he revoked the form? There's no evidence. They're just saying it. So I then taped a voice conversation with the individual in which he says, oh, no, I don't want the form revoked. I want you to have access to my medical records so you can figure out why I'm not getting treatment. So this form was sent on to Leisure Gardens, which is also not honoring that the voice recording. So enter the licensing agency. There's an agency in California called Community Care Licensing, which oversees these sorts of homes. And a complaint was made last December saying that he was his stated wishes as revealed in the form were being overlooked. And lo and behold, the complaint was mysteriously disappeared from the system. Okay? I'm trying to figure out, why isn't the complaint being honored? And it was never put into the system. So, again, I'm speaking with Sacramento Community Care Licensing. We get another complaint in the system, and I get a call from the regional manager of Community Care Licensing, and she says, "Oh, well, this person has a specialist appointment on Monday." That would be, this past Monday, for his hydrocephalus. But he didn't. He didn't have a specialist appointment. I don't know where she got her information. Was she lied to? Was she, telling tales out of school? I mean, you begin to start dealing with people who have a vested interest in the status quo, and it's like dealing with a snake's nest, a nest of snakes.
And the average person going through this, even if they had a niece, or a nephew or a family member who was writing letters and making phone calls for them, they'll get shot down right away. And, well, they told me, they told me it wasn't her. They give up. Well, I've tried, But it's someone like Janet Phelan. What is your background? Do you have a law background or?
No, I did my graduate work in journalism at a really good, solid journalism school. And I've been working in the field for way too long. I don't want to date myself.
No, well, listen, God bless. We have people like Janet Phelan out there trying to do the right thing, and like a dog with a bone, not letting go. It's rare you meet people like this. Real quick, you had put me in touch with a fellow named Hanty, a former sheriff. What's going on with his case?
Well, we actually got Stuart Handy out of jail by doing the research on his judge. And the day after Stuart was originally being held in jail without accessible bail, and the day after the article appeared questioning the financial transactions of his judge, suddenly the judge decided to lower the bail to a manageable amount, and Stuart was free. And I tried to encourage Stuart repeatedly to because he's still being charged.
Right.
So I tried to encourage him repeatedly to research the DA, because the DA also, we're finding the same profile with prosecutors as we're finding with judges, basically.
Oh yeah.
So, I tried to encourage him to look at that and look at the presiding judge, but he didn't apparently do it, and he ended up pleading no contest and is going to be sentenced, I believe, in March.
Can't help them all. You know what I mean, Janet? You can't help them all. I dealt with Mr. Hanty too as well. And he was just filing complaints all over the place, man, just making things worse, in my opinion. But God bless him, okay? I hope he doesn't have to do too much time, because I think he was sincere in his motivation.
Well, I think he was sincere, yeah. And I'd really like to point out that there is a real difference in approach here, because filing complaints and filing motions in court, is essentially invoking the validity of the system and the validity of a judge's determination. And this research process that I am suggesting people use completely stands outside of that, and it shines a light on the judge who is the decider in these cases, shines a light on their own activity, and they don't like it. they don't like this light shown, and they tend to kind of straighten up and start doing the right thing. But I'm very sorry for Stuart Handy. I wish he had taken a different path.
You know what it is, though, too? It's so important to have somebody who's dispassionate, passionate in fighting for your rights, but not personally involved. When you're personally involved, especially if you're an ex-cop and there's a chip on your shoulder, you want to fight everybody, and I can't blame him. I can't blame him because, I've been in that situation too myself, defending myself, and you can get sucked into that personal situation there. And you see so many people, too, they get caught up in the legal system. They want to become lawyers and just really do more damage to themselves than they do. But Janet Phelan, now, you, like we said, you're out there fighting the good fight. You've been doing this a long time. We don't want to, point attention to your age or my age either. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure about 10 years older than you. But you have not gone through this without suffering your own personal consequences. As a matter of fact, you no longer live in the United States, do you?
No, I left the U.S. in 2000.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
2008, following some real misconduct by the legal authorities, and I believed that my freedom was in danger. And I left, and that's it. I'm not coming back. And so.
And there's an old expression: you can run, but you can't hide, right? And they're followed you now to your exile, and you're filing an injunction soon.
Yes. There was some media recently when I filed a cease and desist letter against U.S. intelligence agencies, and I'm alleging basically that my rights are being violated. And at this point in time, I have so much evidence of this. And so I'm working with a lawyer in the U.S. to file an injunction basically saying, stop it. I'm living here in Mexico. I do have temporary residency here now, and I'm not bothering anybody. I'm very, I live a very quiet life. I write, I do radio, I shop for food, like really scary stuff like that, terrorist activities, right? And, I would like to be left alone. And unfortunately, I am not being left alone. And the evidence that is produced in the injunction is massive and overwhelming. So hopefully that will be filed soon. I don't have a whole lot of hope that a judge is going to do the right thing here, because I seem to have not be real friendly with judges these days. But the fact is, that there's a lot of evidence, and if I am able to get enough attention to the injunction, and very possibly these people will simply, pick up their toys and go home. Recently, there have been some other situations that have been, kind of chillingly similar. It does appear that James O'Keefe, who was formerly with Project Veritas, is now incurring a placement on the terrorist watch list, as resulting in some activity by TSA, which he was able to document in a recent airport visit. Also, a U.S.-born journalist, he was born Darren Phelps. He changed his name. He became a Muslim and changed his name to Bilal Abdul Karim, and has been working in the Middle East for such venues as Al Jazeera and CNN, and covering certain aspects of the war in Syria. And the U.S. Not only put him on the terrorist watch list, but apparently tried to blow him up with drone strikes. So he also filed a lawsuit in federal court, and his lawsuit was also dismissed. The U.S. came waltzing into court saying, "Oh, well, this is all national security, and we can't even explain to you, anything. We can't discuss his situation." And the judge, useful idiot that she was, just simply, bobbed her head in acquiescence, and there went Kareem's right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, however, the very fact of his filing the lawsuit appears to have protected him somewhat. So he does appear to be still hanging tough in the Middle East and not being blown up at this point in time. So, there are various things happening to people, and one doesn't choose for this to happen to one, but one deals with the hand one is dealt the best one can.
And then looking back, do you regret taking this path in life, or do you think you had no choice?
My path started because of what happened to my own mother. And my mother was a victim, and so I tried to protect her, not understanding the forces at play, not understanding that the government is in the elder abuse business. I simply did what I could to try to protect her. And would I change that? Absolutely not. No.
There's a book out there called Moral Courage, and it's written by a fellow named Anthony Feinstein. And what he did was he went around the world and he found journalists who were under siege and by their own governments, under oppression, sometimes, by cartels, they're under armed guard 24 hours a day. And he interviewed these people to find out what motivates them to continue in this kind of work. And it's a beautiful book. It's a coffee table style book. I don't get any money from this book. I don't even know this guy because you only had him on the show once. Okay. But if you look at the pictures of these journalists, the pictures of their faces, and if Janet Phelan were to look in the mirror, she would see the same faces. You see there's a look on your face you just have. When you're doing this kind of work, when you're devoting your life to this kind of work, and you're sacrificing yourself and your own freedom, your own well-being to do what's right, to just do what's right. And we need a lot more of that in this world. You know what I mean?
Well, moral courage comes with a price.
Yes.
And so people have to kind of hunker down and figure out what their priorities are. And I have no regrets. I mean, I don't particularly like, the sorts of incursions that are going on in my life right now. But I think it's all started kind of unavoidably in my life. I tried to protect my mother. I was actually successful in protecting her for a couple of years. And would I change that? Absolutely not. So.
Now, are you free to discuss some of the kind of COINTELPRO type CIA problems you're having?
Well, my hope is that when the injunction is finalized and we're winding it up, that I will be able to, that will become public record, and I'm claiming that I am being denied access to health care. I'm claiming that I'm being denied access to any court of law or any sort of legal remedy, and but there's more than that, and I'm hoping that with the filing of the lawsuit, that it will not only make a difference for me, but as there are other people who are now experiencing more or less the same sorts of incursions. I'm hoping that this will result in help for others as well.
Now, Janet Phelan, how were you able to trace this back to the CIA? How do you know it wasn't FBI or NSA or DIA?
Oh, well, I am living outside of the U.S.
Right.
So the only intelligence agency which has the mandate to operate abroad is the CIA. So I'm not claiming that this was originally a CIA project.
Right.
But seeing that I'm now outside the country, it has to be.
Well, NSA is nationwide too, and I'm seeing more and more things tracing back to them lately. But who knows? You know, and there's such a. And I can even see them as being their defense. Well, it's not us; it's the NSA. You know what I mean? God forbid with these people. Now, Janet, back to the book we had you on here originally about here the at the breaking point of history. How is the book being received? How are sales going with that?
Well, I don't actually know. I had some problems with the publisher, as we kind of discussed before the show. So all I know is that I continue to get contacts from readers and also from media about the book, and you know, goodness knows what Trine Day has reported in terms of the sales. Goodness knows.
Okay, so our friend Hanty, Stuart Hanty, was that his name?
Yeah.
Has he turned himself in yet? In an attempt to turn himself in yet?
You know, I don't actually know.
And what about his co-defendant? He had a co-defendant too that's having some problems.
Roger Hilligus. Yeah. It was actually Roger's mother that Stuart and Roger, you know, their crime against humanity was escorting her out of the nursing home and, you know, helping to set her free. So the two of them are being charged with this.
And the Roger, is he turning himself in too? Is there a disposition to that case?
Yeah, Roger was his location was unknown for a while, right. But he was eventually found and arrested and extradited, and you know, you'd think with real criminals, you know, depriving people of medical care and criminal judges depriving people of their rights under the law, you'd think that the FBI would have something better to do with their time than simply to arrest loving sons who are trying to help their parents survive. But
yeah, I would encourage the audience to go back and look at the interview with Stuart Hanty and look up the interview with Janet Phelan, Researching Your Judges, where we get all into this into detail and you hear these stories. It's just outrageous. And if people want to support Janet Phelan's work, I guess they can buy the book, How Decades of U.S. Duplicity Enabled the Pandemic, off of Amazon. But also, too, do you have like a GoFundMe or a donate button someplace where people can buy a cup of coffee?
Oh, I do. I have a buy me a coffee link. So if you go to Buy Me a Coffee and put in my name, you can donate that way. There you
go. Buy Me a Coffee, and you have to spell it correctly. And I know a lot of these hosts, they don't know how to spell their guest names. Okay, Janet.
Shame on them.
What was that?
Shame on them.
I know, right? No one takes pride in their work anymore. Buy Me a Coffee, JANET PHELAN. Janet, keep us posted on this CIA lawsuit. I'd love to see you get some justice in that. And you got an open invitation. Anything you're working on, just give me a call. You come right on, okay?
Thank you so much. I will.
Janet, you got a friend here in the U.S. Okay, Ed Opperman if you need me, okay? God bless you. Thank you.
God bless you.
Good night.
Bye.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.